everyone, my name is Anelise. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am talking about how becoming a wife has changed me for the better. Marriage has had an unbelievably positive impact on my life, and this is something that I never anticipated. I grew up with parents who were divorced, so I never really saw any positive aspects to being married. Similarly, online and just kind of in the modern world at large, anti-marriage and anti-man sentiments abound. I will say this is nothing new, and there are also some valid reasons for that. However, I do want to offer some sentiments to the contrary, because being married and being with my husband specifically has just been honestly such a transformational experience in my life already, and this is still very fresh, of course. My husband and I are coming up on 1 year of marriage, and in the time since I met him, we dated, got engaged, then married, up until now, I have been experiencing the most rapid change and extreme change that I have ever experienced in my life. Things have just been transforming left and right and becoming more beautiful than I ever possibly imagined, and that is due in no small part to my husband and our marriage and relationship. So today I kind of want to go over some of those changes that have happened in my life, and they do sort of run together, and one doesn't exist without all the others. But I just want to spend some time talking about that because it's just been the most unexpected and beautiful blessing that, if you had told me 3 years ago that this is where I would be now, I would have never even known what to think, If you had told me 3 years ago that this is where I would be right now, I would be shocked and in awe and just so grateful. And that is honestly how I feel. It's hard to even believe that this is my life and enjoy my relationship in a way that I had kind of written it off. I thought it probably wasn't possible, it probably wouldn't happen, but there somewhere deep down inside of me, I was still holding out hope. So I'm just very grateful that everything has played out the way that it has. The first element that I want to talk about in how I have changed since becoming a wife, this really goes back to even when my husband and I first started dating. When I met my husband, I was about 30 pounds heavier than I am now, which is not much, but it was definitely enough to make me feel very sluggish, and just I wasn't performing at the capacity that I had been able to previously. I'd never been that much heavier before in my life. I had usually had a pretty stable weight, and then in the past year or two leading up to meeting my husband, I had kind of put some weight on, and I just wasn't feeling my best. I wasn't looking my best, and I didn't feel good about the way that I looked either. One of the first things that my husband and I started regularly doing together when we were dating is working out, going to the gym, specifically lifting weights. And if you know anything about women's health, you know that lifting weights is basically the best form of exercise that a woman can do to maintain her health and longevity over time. It's really good for maintaining bone density. It's great to make sure that you don't have any falls or accidents as you get older. And it's also, I just read recently that when you lift weights, I don't know if this was just women or if it applies across the board, but you reduce your risk of Alzheimer's by 90%. So this change is something, I had lifted weights maybe a handful of times previously to meeting my husband, but he and I started going to the gym multiple times a week together, and he taught me how to do all of these different exercises, and that's something that I have stuck with. He has gotten really into calisthenics recently, so we don't work out together anymore, but I still go to the gym every single week without fail. I lift weights. I feel so much more confident to do so by myself, and to also, keep expanding and trying new things and figuring out a workout plan that works for me. Now, before this, I was very kind of anti-gym, and, there's a reason for that. It is kind of on principle annoying that you have to go to a third space to get your movement in a lot of cases when human life used to just have a lot more movement and exercise just as a part of your daily routine. So there was that resistance, but I also previously did a lot of yoga, and I still do, stretch and all those different things. I don't really go to yoga classes anymore, but that just honestly wasn't enough to fully, get me to break a sweat, really challenge me, and then also like the strength training, weightlifting element was missing there too. Not to mention lifting weights, specifically lifting weights, not just working out, but that specific form of exercise has been so good for my mental health, but we will get into that in a later part of this video. But since meeting my husband, I have dropped those 30 pounds, and I am far and away the best shape that I have ever been in my entire life, in my entire adult life. I feel so good. I've done so many different fitness things that I never thought I would do before. I climbed my first 14er, which is a mountain over 14,000 feet of elevation. We live here in the Rocky Mountains, so that's kind of, a thing. But I did that with my husband, and I started working out with my husband, and I've just taken so much more time and interest in fitness, and I've come to understand how necessary it is. I saw a higher up wellness video on TikTok or Instagram or something, and he mentioned how fitness should be considered a part of one's hygiene routine, just like combing your hair, brushing your teeth, all of those types of things. And I could not agree more. And it is because of my husband and our relationship that I have come to see the importance of fitness for my both physical and mental health, and have incorporated that as a completely non-negotiable part of my hygiene routine. So kind of going off of that, I also want to talk about beauty and appearance. I know it's superficial. We're talking about this outer layer of me, but I've experienced tremendous positive transformation in this area of my life, so I do definitely want to talk about it. First, you probably know I've talked about this previously, but my hair. I used to just keep my hair in a bob because I could not stand to have it in this like awkward in-between length, which it is currently in this awkward in-between length, but I'm growing my hair out. That's what I'm doing. I'm finally gathering the wherewithal to actually grow my hair out. I've always wanted to have long hair. My sister and I both have always wanted to have long hair, and we would always admire people who have long hair when we go out, and be like, oh, look at that girl's hair, That's something we've always wanted, just long, beautiful, healthy hair, and that's something that I never have been able to commit to until meeting my husband. And this is something interesting that I'm still kind of unpacking what it all really means, just overall in my life and in being married. It started, before we got married as well, when we were dating, but it's really ramped up since my husband and I got married. But I've just been so much more taken with like investing time and energy into my appearance, and specifically into my femininity. And hair is one of those, beauty markers of like femininity, is having healthy hair, I think, most importantly, but also like long hair is a pretty typical feminine beauty standard. Regardless, that's something that I've started working toward in being married. And again, I know it sounds superficial, but like, this is so exciting for me. And there is such a huge psychological element to all of these beauty things, because I feel internally so much more confidence. I feel internally so much more comfortability with being seen, taking up space, being perceived as a woman. It speaks to kind of the deeper parts of our relationship and the healing that I've done and been able to do in this relationship, because before I did not feel comfortable being overtly feminine, and my husband, has just been, in his kindness and compassion, he's made me feel very safe and protected, and that has made me flourish and express my femininity much more overtly in ways that I never thought that I would. So continuing on with that, I've also started dressing much more femininely and really started enjoying doing that, getting dressed, looking good, looking feminine and elegant and womanly and all of those things when, you know, before I used to feel, like I said, very uncomfortable with my body. Even, you know, before I had gained that weight, I just didn't want to be seen. It was very uncomfortable, and, you know, now it's not like I dress super revealing or anything, but I dress to express my femininity. Like, even this dress, you know, it's voluminous and, eye-catching in some ways. So that's been a really, really exciting change, because when I was little, when I was a very young girl, I loved dressing up. You know, I was wearing skirts and dresses and little tights and shoes that match, and my mom would do my hair and all those things, and I kind of fell out of that due to insecurity, like in high school and early adulthood. So it's been really, really fun to get that back. Similarly, I've also started wearing a little bit of makeup. Nothing crazy. I like to keep it pretty natural. I'm pretty outdoorsy and just like always doing something. So a full face doesn't really work for me, but you know, a little blush, doing my eyebrows. I'm not wearing any right now, but that kind of stuff has been like really fun to lean into as well. And then arguably the biggest physical change that I've undergone besides the weight loss has been my teeth. So I probably will at some point make a whole video about the entire process that I had done, because it was extremely intensive and invasive, honestly, but I had crooked teeth. I got braces when I was very young. It ended up, the orthodontist was kind of kind of deceitful to my parents. I don't know, I was a kid, but he would basically, I went through a whole course of braces before I even hit middle school, and then he kind of told my parents that I would have to get braces again, and they were not about that. So I did not get braces again. You know, of course I was like 10, so I grew out of my retainer, my teeth went crooked again, and then from that point on, I just continued to have crooked teeth. In high school, you know, there were reasons that I just didn't get braces again, and so I kind of just resigned myself to having crooked teeth, and I tried to just accept it, but it definitely took a toll and had an impact on my confidence. I smiled with closed lips in all my pictures, and I just, you know, I was always covering my mouth, worried about like food in my teeth and everything, because they were very much like overlapping, but for whatever reason, I just had kind of written off getting braces as an option. And then as I got older, it was like I wanted to do it less and less, because now I'm an adult. But when I started dating my husband, I don't even know what exactly happened. It just felt so natural, but I just kind of told him one day, I was like, I think I want to get braces. And he totally supported me in that, and I did end up getting braces, and I also had to have a surgery to install a palate expander and have an incision made here to kind of widen my upper palate to make room for my crowded teeth. And as it turns out, we actually got married when I still had my braces. So on my wedding day and all my wedding photos, I have braces on. That just goes to show how much more confident I had already become in myself and just in my imperfections and just being at peace with myself. And that is very much so due to my relationship with my husband. He's just always been so supportive and made me feel so accepted and loved and beautiful. So that allowed me to actually take steps to do what I wanted to do to make my appearance more how I wanted it. But yeah, they're finally off. My teeth are straight, and my confidence in getting my braces off has just absolutely skyrocketed. I love smiling in pictures, and you know, it's another layer of just being comfortable, being seen, and just feeling natural and good in my own skin, which has been a really, really big change. I can't overstate that. Now, this is just kind of a lighthearted change, but when my husband and I first started dating, I was a silver girl through and through and through, to the point that, you know, I was expecting, when we got engaged, a silver ring. I was very, very clear about that. And, you know, He did. It's a funny story because the ring actually fell out of the ring box into his pocket, so when he proposed to me, there was no ring at all. But it was kind of a funny foreshadowing moment because he did have a silver ring, that I had kind of picked out. It was my mom's, but then he also, I had no idea previously to this, but his grandmother had given him her engagement ring, and he was thinking about using it, but he was very torn because of how adamant I had been about being a silver girl. I'm a silver girl, so it's just funny because he tried to he was not sure which ring to propose with, and he ended up not having either ring in the box when it happened. So after the proposal, he fished the ring out of his pocket and he put it on my finger, the silver one, and then when we were at dinner after, he showed me the gold ring that was his grandmother's, and it was so beautiful, and I was so taken with it. It's right here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it totally, but I was just so delighted with it. I had a really hard time finding a ring that I liked. Modern rings were just really not doing it for me, so I figured that my mom's ring was a safe option. It was just very simple. It just had one larger diamond in the center and then two slightly smaller ones on either side. Just very plain, very minimal. I was like, this is fine. I can't find anything that I like better. So, but this ring just totally surpassed all my expectations. And, at first I was like, okay, I'll just mix metals, I'll do both. But as time has gone on, I have made the switch totally over to gold, and wouldn't you know it, I actually got my colors analyzed recently, and I'm a soft autumn, which is warm, so gold jewelry suits me better anyway. So that's kind of a fun change that I probably never would have done if it weren't for my husband. And as it turns out, my mom and sister don't wear gold. They typically stick to silver. So we had all of this kind of family heirloom gold jewelry that nobody was wearing and nobody was gonna wear, that I've kind of gotten to take on as my own. So now every day I wear my grandma's class ring, which is gold. I have my great grandma's hoop earrings in my ears, and then I have my grandma's initial necklace because her name also started with A. So that's just been a really fun change, and I love this jewelry. I love that I get to wear jewelry that has so much meaning and value in my family, and even this one, this has family history with it too. So it's just so fun, and it's more harmonious with my face colors too. So all's well that ends well, right? The next change that I want to talk about has been the change in my mental health. When I met my husband, as I said, I was overweight, very unhappy, and I was on antidepressants at the time. When we started dating, he kind of helped me find the confidence to take the jump to get off of antidepressants. It was something that I had gone on because I was going through a really hard time in my life, and it was something that I did not enjoy whatsoever. I found it just very numbing overall, It didn't just suppress the bad emotions I was having. For me, it just kind of suppressed everything, and I just felt like I was kind of walking around in a fog. With that kind of hard season of my life being over, I really did want to try to move forward without being on medication, and he was very encouraging in that. And he helped me through a lot of days that were just I was really out of it and kind of having, I guess it would technically be withdrawal symptoms of not being on it. But I'm so grateful that I made that jump and, went through. It was probably a period of 3 to 6 months where I just felt really crappy, and coming off of them and transitioning, back to just kind of raw dogging life, if you will. He really helped me through that, and then from there on, he continued to be extremely supportive and help keep me grounded and centered in my mental health and inner peace. I've always been a very emotional and some might say moody person, and he just really balances that out in me and gives me the loving reality check that I need, helps me get out of my own head and get out of the funks that I find myself in and just live, you know what I mean? I'm definitely someone who's prone to overthinking, and he's really helped me kind of break that habit. and my life is so much better because of it, and just how steady and consistent of a presence he has been in my life. That's just been very grounding for me. I always know what I'm gonna get from him, and it is always acceptance and love and encouragement. And he just makes me feel so seen, and that has made me feel more comfortable in who I am and in being seen by others, and opening myself up to like love and relationships with others, not romantic ones, but like friendships and just like community connections and all those things. As my confidence has grown because of all of the love that he has poured into me, that has allowed more love to come into my life from other places too. Now, this mental health change happened in no small part because my husband also has really been leading me in so many beautiful ways in our spiritual life as well. Before I met him, I don't know, I was like new age, I guess. I did yoga teacher training. I read those kinds of books, and I was always very spiritual for as long as I can remember. I grew up in a pretty secular, liberal environment, so I had a really bad taste in my mouth about Christians, and that makes sense. The most hateful voices in Christianity are the loudest, so I kind of wanted nothing to do with that and had written it off. But when I met my husband, he was a Christian. I can't say enough good things about him, really, because he was just he's so easygoing and natural and just kind to other people and just open and always like connecting with everyone that he encounters. And he's, of course, still very much that way. But the consistency was like the biggest draw for me. That was just like really attractive, like he is just going to treat everybody the same, and he's going to approach every situation with the same like even peaceful temperament, and look for a solution, and lead with kindness and all those things. The more that I saw all of those qualities in him and how consistent he was in those qualities, I don't know, it just became so abundantly obvious to me that I wanted to be where he was, and I wanted to go where he went, and I wanted to do what he was doing. He was going to church, I would go with him. And it was just kind of a non-issue for me. And then, of course, we made the decision to move into the Orthodox Christian church together, and that was a mutual decision, but that was something that had kind of been on my radar, something that I had always actually wanted to do. I had, very close family members who I absolutely adored, who were Orthodox Christians, and I'd always been curious about it, but again, it was something I never had the confidence to pursue for myself. That was something that we did together. When I first started going to church with my husband, I still, wasn't totally sure. I was like, I don't really know, but I was open, and I trusted him. That was the main thing. I trusted him. I trusted what he was doing, and I saw in his life how evident it was. Like, he's the best person I've ever met, still, far and away. That's what he's doing, great. I'm doing that too. And it didn't totally click for me, and it's still like, I'm still very much on a faith journey of like understanding my faith and as a Christian and what that means and how to live that out and everything. But as we moved into Orthodoxy, and especially when we've experienced our first Easter Pascha in the Orthodox Church, that really changed a lot for me too, and just like made Christianity click for me in a way that it never had before when we were at a Protestant church. But that's something that we get to experience together, which is just so amazing. And I've also been thinking about, side note, making a video about my experience of my first Pascha. It's been a few months now, but I do still think that that would be cool and relevant to speak about. So if that interests you at all, do let me know. I have other videos on my channel speaking more about why I'm converting. My husband and I are converting to Orthodoxy, so feel free to check those out as well. Like I said, 3 years ago, if you told me I was going to be, getting baptized as an Orthodox Christian this July, in 2 weeks or whatever, I would be like, what? For real? Like, it's just so crazy and so amazing, and such a total 180, from where I was before. So again, kind of piggybacking off of that, my husband, perhaps the greatest change, it's hard to really pinpoint one. All of this in my mind has been one huge overhaul of my person that has happened, as a direct result of being married. I guess at the very least it has very much correlated with this transition into marriage. Before I met my husband, I had like no respect for or genuine interest in like the inner life of men. It is only through his patience and, gentleness and openness that I have been able to fully appreciate men and masculinity for all that it is, including traditional masculinity, including, what you might say is just socialized, but like the typical like guy things that guys like. Never before have I had any interest in that. And in, dating and getting married and all those things, I've come to see men as like just so much more beautiful than we ever give them credit for. And, like I said at the beginning of this video, there's like so much man on woman and woman on man hate, and it's just terrible. And it breaks my heart now because I see so much beauty and so much purpose in men and in relationships with men, in women's relationships with men. So, just thanks to my husband and being married and being in such close, constant proximity with a man that I've, really come to respect and appreciate men as a whole. And I'm really, really grateful for that. It's kind of inspired me to read more like books about men and like relationships with men. The two that come to mind right off the bat are Iron John by Robert Bly, which is kind of like a book about men's journey into like self-actualization, more or less. And it's about myth as well, and the journeys that myth can take us on, which is really cool. And then also The Queen's Code by Alison Armstrong. That is more of a relationship book, but it specifically hones in on how men operate and how their minds work and how to have a thriving relationship with them that honors who they are instead of trying to change who they are. And that is, a far cry from how I viewed men and my relationships with men just a few short years ago. That too has allowed me to feel so much more peace and surrender in our relationship, and to allow him to lead and do things his way and take charge of different elements of our relationship. Before, I used to be so controlling and so territorial and so protective of my own life. And that was also, based in the insecurity, the deep insecurity that I felt, and my fear of like taking up space or just being perceived, whatever you want to call it. Like, I was just so fiercely protective of myself and fiercely independent. And, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does kind of write off a certain level of connection. And you can only have so much intimacy with people, and especially like with your husband, if you are constantly trying to control everything. So being able to surrender in that way and just kind of just relax, be at peace, trust him, and he has proven himself to me over time, and with, like I said, consistency, to where I feel that trust. That trust is natural to me, and it feels easy to drop my guard and allow him to take the reins in things. And that has been so good for my soul. It's like, I don't know what you would call it, but it's not a vicious cycle, it's a positive cycle, The more that I trust him, the more that I can kind of let him lead, and the more that I let him lead, the more that I trust him, because he always leads us somewhere good. And we were just talking about that the other day. I was just telling him, like, I love being married to you because whenever you are leading me, I know that we're going somewhere good. And I know that you're taking care of me and you have my best interest at heart. And that is a beautiful level of intimacy in a relationship and in a marriage that, like, I don't take for granted at all. you know, I hope that everybody gets to experience that. And the other thing that's so exciting about it is that we have our whole lives ahead of us. Like I said, we haven't even been married a year yet. And already I feel so much beauty and so much richness. I have this beautiful sense of anticipation too, because we have our whole lives ahead of us. I'm like, gosh, if this is how I feel now, how magnified this is going to be in 10, 20, 40, 60 years, you know? God willing, we'll be married for that long and longer. But this increased sense of peace and increased sense of trust in my life has contributed to my increased expression of femininity and just taking joy in who I am as a woman. That is so beautiful, and that is a reality that I genuinely, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, what have you, in high school, I could have never imagined that for myself. And again, I think that is in no small part due to all of the stuff we see online of men and women just totally lambasting each other and just having so much vitriol toward each other. And, you know, I know those emotions come from very real experiences, but let me tell you that this, you know, the emotional experience and the reality and the transformation that I have experienced also comes from a really real place too, and it is possible, and I just want to encourage everyone in that. And to that end, you know, that's really all I have for you today, but I will leave you with this quote that I love and I think really beautifully applies to marriage. If you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together. All right, like I said, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I really appreciate you being here. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Plenty more where that came from, and there's plenty more coming. Let me know if you have any video requests down below. Let me know what you thought about this video, questions, comments, concerns, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.